Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be taking a quick look at Star Realms. It's a two-player deck building game by White Wizard Games. You can add a deck to it to play up to 4 players, but we'll just look at the 2-player rules today.
Okay, so first we'll look over the setup. To do the setup, you need to separate out all the Viper, Scout, and Explorer cards from the main deck. I've already done that, and we also have scorecards. They may look different in different versions of the game, but in mine, it's these. So each player starts with 50 life points, and the life points in this game are called authority. You can track them with these cards. So this would be 50. That would be 53, that would be 56, so that's how you track it. So set that down for each player at 50, and then we'll construct the starting player decks. Okay. So to construct the player deck, each player gets 8 scout cards, and 2 Viper cards. You shuffle them up as best as you can. It's kind of hard to shuffle only 8 cards, and place them in a player area. We'll say right about there. Leave space for a discard pile as well. Okay, so that is the player area. They have their scores and their deck and room for the discard. So now we set up the actual game. We start with these 10 Explorer cards, place them right here where both players can reach them. Let's see, let's try to make a little bit more room on camera. Okay, and then you take the remaining cards, make sure they're well shuffled, and these should be. You deal out 5, and this is what is called trade row. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You put the remaining cards over here and leave enough space to make sure they have something called the scrap heap, which is kind of a global remove from game pile. So now this is our playing area. So the way you play is every turn you will have the option to buy cards from this pile, and then you'll be able to attack your opponent with the cards in your hand and the cards on the pile. You want to get your opponent's authority down to 0. I'll look at the different types of cards just to be sure we can have everything covered. I want to pull a couple of bases here too. Okay. So the regular cards have a few things. They have a cost, which is spent in trade points. So you can buy it for 3 trade points. And when they're played, cards have a primary ability, and that you get exactly when you play the card. There's no cost to playing cards, you just put them in your play area. And then they have a faction. If they have separate cards, here. So if they have 2 cards in the play, 2 or more cards with the same faction, then they can also use this faction ability. In this case, it would be do 2 damage to your opponent. And then some cards also have a scrap ability, and if you play the scrap ability, they go into the global scrap heap and they're removed from the game, and you gain the ability. So in this case, say if you had this card and you played its scrap ability, you would remove it from the game and be able to draw a card. There's also something called bases and outposts. Regular cards, when they're played, after the turn is over, they go into your discard pile. Bases and outposts stay in play until they're destroyed. They have life points. They have their own shield points. So this one has 5, this one has 4. Your opponent could attack the base instead of attacking you, and if they deal 5 damage to it, it goes to your discard. If they have an outpost, your opponent has to attack that card before they attack you. So those are cards we'll draw in the coming rounds. So the order of operation, you determine which player goes first. In this case, we'll just say player 1, which is this way, will go first. The first player starts with 3 cards, and then the next player starts with 5, and then every turn you'll refill your hand with 5 cards. They just want to give player 1 a minor disadvantage since they have a minor advantage from starting. So in your turn, you can play cards, and when you play cards, you immediately gain their primary ability. These Vipers and Scouts, that's their only ability, so they would play these. The Viper would deal 1 damage, and the Scouts would give player 1 1 trade point. Those go to a temporary pool, sort of like a mana pool, that you can either spend that turn or it's discarded into the netherworld at the end of your turn. So with these 2 trade points, player 1 would be able to spend 2 trade on any cards here, including the Explorers. So player 1 will start with this card. And when you buy a new card, it doesn't come into your hand and it doesn't come into play. It comes into your discard. And the way you power up is when you run out of cards, you shuffle your discard and draw from there. So as you get new cards, they come into your discard pile, and then eventually they'll come into your main play. Whenever you buy a card from trade row, you immediately replace it with another. So now after those, so these 2 have been spent, and now we spend the attack, and so that deals 1 damage to the opponent. So the opponent's authority will go from 50 to 49. And you can use these cards it comes with, or you can use dice or paper, however you want to track points. I think different versions come with different types of scoring cards as well. But anyhow, so that's a turn. You play cards, you spend your attack or your abilities, and then at the end of your turn, any cards you played, any cards in your hand, are both put in the discard pile, and then any points you had that were trade points or attack points that you didn't spend are just gone. You didn't use them. And then you end your turn by drawing 5 new cards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now it would be player 2's turn. So player 2 will look at their hand, and they'll have, you know, Vipers and Scouts because this is the opening game. So with they could play up to 4 points. So I think what player 2 will do is drop down the attack and then play all 4 Scouts, have 4 trade points in the mana pool to spend, and will buy 2 Explorer cards. So now Explorer cards you can use in 2 ways. They'll actually go to the graveyard since they're bought, but when you play them, you can play them for the 2 trade points, or you can scrap them and deal 2 damage to your opponent. Now normal cards, when they're scrapped, they go to the scrap heap and they stay there forever. Explorer cards are an unlimited supply of cards you can buy, so instead of putting them in the scrap heap, they go back to the original pile and trade row when they're scrapped. But these 2 that this player just bought will go over there. And then player 2 will deal the 1 damage to player 1. So player 1 is also at 49 life. And now player 2 ends the turn by discarding all their cards, drawing 5 more. And there's 5 more in the hand. So there. So we'll do a few more turns just to kind of show you how it works. So now it is player 1's turn again. Player 1 has a Viper, 4 Scouts, so they'll play the Viper to deal a damage. And then with the 4 points, player 1 will buy the space station Outpost. And again, when you buy it, it goes to your discard. And then, so these cards have all been played and used, and now we'll deal the damage. So that'll put player 2 down to 48 life. And now the turn's over as soon as we, whoops. See, and I forget, whenever you take a card from trade row, you need to replace it. So these cards go to discard, were played, and player 2 draws 5 new cards. Only 2 in the deck. So now here's where you see the shuffle. So the 2 go here, or you draw the 2, and then it's time to shuffle. So now this, whoops, dropped one, hold on. So now these get all shuffled up and 3 more cards are drawn. And player 1's turn is over. So now player 2. Player 2 can look in their hand. They've got nothing but Vipers and Scouts again, so they'll deal a damage and can play up to 4 of these. So they have 4 trade points in their mana pool and 1 damage. So with the 4 trade points, player 2 will buy the supply bot. So the supply bot costs 3 trade points. It's the red faction, so if there was another red faction in play, it'd be able to use this extra ability and deal 2 more damage when it's played, but it doesn't have that. But its other ability is you gain 2 trade and you can scrap a card in your hand or discard pile.
So you might be wondering why you would ever want to scrap one of your cards. Well, it's because it's a deck building game, so your deck gets more powerful as you play, and you might want to get rid of some of your weaker cards in order to increase the chances of drawing some of your higher cards.
Okay, so then this just goes to their discard pile, and you'll notice we only spent 3 of the 4 trade points. There's nothing else that player can buy for 1, so actually, look at that. They replaced it with 1 they could buy for 1. So they'll actually do that too. And this is a blob fighter, and its primary ability is to deal 3 damage. Its faction ability is to draw a card. So that'll go in the discard pile. All these cards will go in the discard pile. We'll deal the 1 damage to player 1, putting player 1 at 48. Replace the card. And now player 2 has no cards to draw, so they shuffle their deck. We'll do just a couple more sample hands just to give you a little better idea how it works and show you some of these other cards in play. So they draw 5 cards, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put the rest in their deck. There, now player 1. So player 1 has a brand new hand, and player 1 didn't shuffle too well. So player 1's hand, we've got this one now, the trade pool. So they can play that for 3 trade points, and they can play 3 more for up to 6. And we'll also play a Viper to deal a damage. So with the 6 trade points, player 1 will take the Missile Mech. Missile Mech, when played, will destroy a target base and deal 6 damage. So that's a pretty cool card. And if you have a faction, you'll also get to draw a card. So that goes to the discard since it was just bought. We deal the 1 damage, putting player 2 at 47. And now we do the discard phase. Draw 5 more cards. And the turn is over. Player 2 has a very boring hand, but player 2 with up to 3 trade points could buy this one. So player 2 will play the 3 scouts to get the trade points, draw the embassy yacht, which when played, if you have 2 or more bases in play, draw 2 cards. That's cool. Gain 3, that's authority, so gain 3 life points back or authority points, and 2 trade points. So that's not a bad card to have. It goes to the discard for now though. And then we'll play the 2 Vipers to deal 2 damage, putting player 1 down to 46 life. Oh yeah, and we have to replace the 2. And now player 2 discards their cards, draws 5 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whoops. Did I get 5? Yep. Okay, let's do one more round and then wrap things up. So player 1 has, this is what I was waiting for, wanted to play base. So here's the base. It's an outpost, so it stays in play after discard because it's a base. And since it's an outpost, player 2 has to attack it before it can attack player 1. You also deal 2 damage when it's played. And if you have a faction, same whatever that star is, the same card with that faction, you would deal 2 damage. Or you could scrap heap it and gain 4 trade points. So we'll put the Outpost in play, and we'll see what else is in the hand. We've got a Viper to deal 1 damage, so we'll be dealing 3 damage total, and 3 trade points. So with the 3 trade points, now we've got some options. We can't buy that for 7, but we could buy this one for 3, this one for 2, or an Explorer. So really, I would pick probably the Ram, since they can deal damage. So we'll buy that for the 3 trade points. It goes to discard. Now we assign the damage, so 3 damage. That puts player 2 down to 44. And now that's the, whoops, keep forgetting to replace cards. Okay, now we do the discard phase and the draw phase. Only 2 cards left in the deck, so we deal the 2. Once again, shuffle. Oh, you know what I forgot to do? I forgot to leave the Outpost out. Don't forget to do that. Okay, now we shuffle. And draw 3 more cards. Okay, so now player 2. Player 2 can play 5. So they'll have 5 cards. They'll have up to 5 trade points to do. So we'll play those 5. And then we'll also play this. The Blob Fighter. Blob Fighter will deal 3 damage. So the damage pool has 3. Now, here's the problem for player 2. They have to attack the Outpost first. The Outpost has 4 shield, so we can deal 3 to the shield, and that won't kill it. And there's nothing else player 2 can do to deal damage, so that won't kill it. It resets at the end of the turn. You have to do 4 damage in 1 turn. So player 1 will take no damage. And now with up to 5 trade points to play, player 2 will buy the Hive, which is a base, not an outpost. So the opponent doesn't have to attack this. The opponent can attack it if they want. I guess that's the other thing I failed to say about outposts and bases. They stay in play every turn. So like this one is in play, so every turn it will deal 2 damage. At any time, could scrap it and gain 4 points. And if you play another faction card, it'll deal another 2. And, oh, just bought the Hive. So the Hive is of this faction, so it will work with that one if they're ever played at the same time. But for now, it goes to the discard. And that's it. We discard everything else. We replace this. Discard these. Draw 5 new cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we shuffle. And draw 1 more. Okay, and here's the last turn. So player 1 has a mech missile, which we can play. You may destroy target base. We don't have a base, but so play the missile mech, play a Viper, and then we've got 3 points to work with. And player 1 will use 2 of those. Play 2 of those cards to draw the Cutter. Cutter looks halfway decent. It goes to discard. And so player 1 will deal 6 damage from this, 1 from the Viper, and 2 from the space station for a total of 9 damage. So 44 minus 9 is what, 35? So we get to 35. You see how you notate that. Okay, and then that's the end of the turn, or the action phase. So there was this scout in player 1's hand they never used. We just discard it. Discard everything except that base. Draw 5 new cards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the turn is over. We'll do 1 more turn with player 2 just to see if they can kill that base. And player 2, yes, player 2 can kill that base, and here's how. So player 2 has 3 scouts. I think player 2 is going to play 2 of those scouts to buy an explorer. So the explorer will go in the discard, and then they'll keep that scout in their hand because there's no use for it. And then they will take these 2 explorer cards, and instead of playing them, do their scrap heap effect. So they will go to the scrap heap, but then player 2 will gain 4 points in their damage pool. So that 4 points will go and kill the outpost. Outpost goes into player 1's discard pile. And then explorer cards, like I said, they do not stay in the global scrap heap pile. They go back to trade row because they're an unlimited resource. Other cards would stay in there for the remainder of the game. But that is it for player 2's turn. They discard all their cards. They had a remaining scout in their hand that also goes to the trash or the discard pile, and they deal 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards. So it goes like that until one player is down to 0 authority. And that is how you play Star Realms.
So thanks for watching. If you'd like to support us, you can like this video and subscribe to the channel. You can also visit tabletopjason.com to find links to all the games I review here. And if you'd like to check out my card game, you can visit 52dragons.com, where you can find links to order that game or subscribe to Patreon to receive new cards each and every month. I'll be back with another video, so until then, thanks for watching.